Hi, welcome everybody to this, the second in a series of podcasts I'm running entitled Bureau Business. I'm running these on behalf of the Association of Bureau Managers. It's a membership community dedicated to supporting and promoting the work of payroll bureau professionals, a sector of the business world I've got a particular love for, whether they operate in an accountancy practice or a pure bureau, or Puro as they've been called. Anybody interested? Membership is open to anyone working in a payroll bureau, not just managers. We run bureau manager roundtable sessions around the UK. I hosted one in Edinburgh just last week. We run monthly webinars on a variety of topics of interest to bureau managers. We've got a WhatsApp group which keeps really busy with all sorts of queries and topics. And there's an annual conference which I'll tell you more about later. We've got more activities planned, and it is our first year, so we're very busy sort of getting the whole organisation up and running properly, and there should be a website within the next couple of weeks. So it's busy. Note, the association doesn't cover any aspect of compliance and legislation and all that sort of stuff. I believe it's adequately, if not superbly, covered by a number of organisations that already exist, and that is not the area that I want to focus my attention on anyway. I think bureau management brings with it a whole host of additional areas of responsibility: managing people, managing clients, managing software, marketing, sales, pricing, a whole host of things. It's this area that I try to focus our activities in. I'm extremely grateful to the Payroll Centre and their ACT product for sponsoring these podcasts. I'm really grateful for the confidence they've shown in me and my work with payroll bureaus by supporting these podcasts. So thank you, guys. Without their help, we just couldn't run these podcasts. But more about ACT and the Payroll Centre later. Although, if you didn't know, interesting fact I came across is that the Payroll Centre are the largest payroll assessment and training organisation in the UK. So that's quite some claim to fame. So it's time for to introduce my second guest on these podcasts, which I'm very excited to do. He's a very well-known payroll celebrity. So I've given you a hint already, seen on countless panels and various events in the payroll world, including many of mine. But I thought we'd take this opportunity to get to learn a little bit more about the man behind the celebrity, this Essex boy. So I'm really pleased to introduce the Director of Payroll at Moore Kingston Smith here in London, Mr. Adam Flight.
Thanks, Barry. Lovely to be here.
Well, Adam, thanks for joining us and returning specially from your golfing holiday to come and be with us. So, right, let's get stuck in, Adam. We're here in the city, which is your main office, obviously. Very posh too. It's lovely, isn't it? Lovely. Do you operate payroll out of this office at all? Because I know you've got several offices.
Yeah, so pre-COVID, we used to be mainly based out of Romford in East London, but post-COVID, the team are pretty much 100% remote. Right. With one person in the office full-time, and then others visiting sort of as and when. Right. I'm generally the only payroll person operating sort of out of the city, and we've got other offices dotted around, but everyone is pretty much remote.
Oh, brilliant, amazing, really. So you've leapt ahead to one of my later questions there. A bit more then about you, the human being that was, by the sounds of your accent, you're an Essex boy, is
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
Born and bred?
Yes. Yeah, born and bred in Essex, not far from sort of Harlow. It's only about 25 minutes from here,
Right.
sort of on the train. But my career started back in the early 2000s in HR.
You're jumping ahead here again.
Oh, there we go.
I want to talk about nursery school.
Oh, okay.
No, school. So when did you go to school? Was it Harlow, near Harlow?
No, I went to a school out in Hertfordshire, St Edmunds College.
Ooh.
Yes. Privately educated.
Oh, right.
But
Here
if,
we go.
but if you saw my GCSE results, you would wonder what that private education actually got me.
Was the money well spent?
No.
All right, okay. I knew there would be some nugget to uncover, so privately educated, God. Good for you. What was your favourite subject at school?
Probably PE.
Really?
Yeah, I did GCSE PE. I was on all of the sports teams, rugby, football, captain of athletics, although you wouldn't think it to look at me now. But yeah, no, just absolutely loved sport at school. The academic side of things, as I alluded to earlier, was more just a by the by, but sport was the thing.
When did you first pick up a golf club?
Probably when I was about 15 or 16.
Right,
My dad used to be a member of a local sort of course. Right. And so started off, sort of then played it for about 6 or 7 years,
right.
And then family, first marriage got in the way and everything else, and then I took it back up about 7 or 8 years ago.
Right. Yeah, most people have there's a lull, isn't there, when families come along. When you were at school, what did you want to be then? Did you want to be a sportsman?
No, so originally sort of given my era, Indiana Jones was big, so I originally wanted to be an archaeologist until I found that it wasn't all sort of adventures. It is literally digging in dirt and sort of using all brushes to uncover stuff, so decided against that. Possibly a physiotherapist because of the sports side of things, or a teacher. And then I did a year's voluntary youth work working in schools, and that put me off for life. So yeah.
How interesting, man. And that's one thing I do love about these podcasts. We do get a little bit of the person behind the director of payroll, which is interesting. So your first job then, so you tried that teaching training for an hour for a year? Yeah,
I did that as a year out because I didn't get the A-levels I needed to go to university, so took a year out doing voluntary youth work. Right. Then went to a local college, did business management, and needed to pick a specialism. I scored.
Why did you pick business management then?
Just something very generic across the board that I could go
into.
Industry. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I had to pick a specialism between finance, sales, marketing, or HR. Right. Although I scored better on finance, I didn't want to be an accountant and stuck with spreadsheets. Although sort of 25 years later, I'm in payroll, so it's come around full circle. But no, I still remember sort of thinking, right, if there was a recession and if redundancies needed to be made, what would be the last department to go? And so I thought, well, you always need people in HR to fire other people. So I wasn't creative enough to be in marketing, didn't have the gift of the gab to be in sales, so went into HR.
I think it's arguable whether you've got the gift of the gab. We can tell already.
So my first job was working in a nursing recruitment agency in High Street, Kensington. Because in order to get into HR, you needed some form of experience.
Yeah. So how did you get this job? Where did you see it advertised or whatever?
Probably advertised in the Metro or sort of somewhere back then. Didn't have the jobs boards and the internet as well as good as it is today. And did that for 6 months. Before then getting into my first HR and payroll job at the Tower Hotel, which was owned by Thistle Hotels then.
So how did that move come about then?
Again, just looking around, hated the shift work and travelling 2 hours each way to High Street Kensington, and they were looking for someone that they could mould that didn't have any experience, and I had 4 months to learn how to run a 400 weekly person payroll before the payroll manager went on maternity leave because no one else in the office needed to do it. So those were the days with the dot matrix printers. All of the holiday cards were done on sort of sheets of A4 in various folders.
So are there no dot matrix printers anymore?
No, afraid
not.
Wow.
That's
probably in a museum somewhere, but certainly not around here anymore.
All right. So in your first job then, you're getting a taste for HR. Some exposure to payroll?
Yeah, it was actually started mainly in payroll.
Right, and so that was
with a bit of HR.
And you thought, did you? I'll quite like this?
I always wanted to do more HR than payroll.
Right.
So after that job, I then did go into more HR specific sort of roles in various different industries.
Training and
training, employee
qualifications.
relations.
Qualifications
Oh,
for you?
yeah, no, I did CIPD.
Right.
Again, so that was sponsored by the next employer that I was with,
Right.
working in HR for a publishing magazine company.
Who's that?
IPC Media, who are now owned by Time Warner.
Yeah.
So they had
he's
all
a
the
name dropper, this lad, isn't he?
yeah, they did Marie Claire, Woman and Home, all the Nuts Loaded, NME magazines. So as you can imagine, going into different floors with different magazines, you had certainly very different personalities.
Yeah, and which must have been interesting from a HR perspective, managing these creative types.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, bit different in payroll, I suppose, isn't it? Geez, do you remember your first pay slip?
I do. It was when I was working for Tesco's back in 1995, 96.
Right.
Again, in envelopes, sort of you had to go to the wage office and collect them.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, probably did come off of a...
Did you collect
doc-
cash? Or
No,
were you paid
it
into the
was
bank?
paid into bank account
Right.
sort of back then, but it was, torn off pay slip, stuffed in an envelope.
Yeah.
Earning back then whatever I think it was probably about £4 or £5 an hour.
Right. Yeah. I remember mine. In my first proper job was £82 a month.
Wow.
There you are. About roughly £20 a week, which was a very good wage for the time. So, how long have you been at NKS then?
It'll be 10 years on Friday.
Will it?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. How that time's flown.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Adam. So, tell us about joining here and where you came from and how you got this job here.
Yeah, so I was working as a HR and payroll officer for a local manufacturing company in Harlow. I'd been working with a recruiter for a number of years, sort of prior to that.
Because through your role as HR.
through roles, she used to recruit for various roles for other companies that I'd worked for, and contacted me and said, "I've got this fantastic job as a HR consultant, working in Romford, and anyone that works in HR, particularly in-house, going from in-house to consultancy is like going from in-house payroll to a bureau. It is so different. Not knowing who's going to call, who's going to email, what you're going to be sorting out." So
is that one thing you like about the job?
It was one thing, back then it was terrifying because I just didn't know what I didn't know. And the first time that phone goes and you're left on your own to pick it up and sort of deal with the query, not knowing what's coming through, was pretty scary. But I realised I knew a lot more than I thought, but at the same time I learned a lot more. So so started off in HR consultancy here back in 2014.
And what was the team? What sort of team were you part of?
So it's part of the Morkington Smith HR consultancy team.
A team of how many?
There were a team of eight of us.
Back then, yeah.
Back then, they've grown. They've got a team of 10 or 11 sort of now.
Yeah.
Some people who were there are still there. There are some new faces. And then this role came up back in 2018.
Yeah, I did have 6 years in mind, so that's where the 6 years has come from then.
Yeah, so it came up, and I still remember my manager at the time came out of a meeting and he said, "You'll never guess what roles come up." Told me about it, and I thought, fancy a bit of a change. Had that sort of 4-year itch, and then the following Monday, asked to have a meeting with him, and he said, "You're not resigning." I went, "Well, not technically, but I do want to apply for that role." And here I am 6 years later, still smiling, not turned grey yet, and enjoying the world of payroll.
Good lad. So, what was the size of the operation that when you started with the payroll side?
Previous to moving across, I'd never managed more than 2 direct reports. So this role, I was had 13 direct reports, about 600 clients, and over the last 6 years, we're now up to a team of 26, which has, as of last week, through an acquisition that Morkington Smith have made, Acquiring WMT, we will be adding another 5 to that, so that takes us to plus 30. And we look after just over 1,000 clients and about 20,000 pay slips.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about we're in this acquisitive phase. I'll come on to that later. I think it's really interesting, and I wasn't sure if you're already too big to need to buy or want to buy, but obviously you've splashed out on they're a local firm, aren't they?
Yes, St Albans. So they'll be joining our St Albans office.
And the team will then be how big?
Be 31.
Right, okay.
So yeah, ever growing.
That is tremendous. It's one of the biggest teams I sort of know. About 30 is one of the bigger teams, and 1 or 2 others, sort of specialists. So how do you, with that many people, let's forget WMT for now, how do you structure the organisation and management of, how many payrolls are there in there now?
So payrollers in the team, we've got about 20 people sort of actually doing the day-to-day sort of payroll.
Yeah.
As I said, 6 years ago, it was very flat structure, 13 administrators,
Right.
of varying levels of sort of experience and background. But within the first couple of years, we changed the structure. So you now have associates, advisors and senior advisors.
Associates being
The entry level.
Yeah.
And then you have supervisors, assistant manager,
Wow.
sort of myself. So we've broken them down into 3 teams. So we have 3 teams that are a mix of associates, advisors and seniors, all headed up by a supervisor. And then 2 assistant managers who look after more the compliance side of things. And then a manager that looks after the day-to-day sort of operations side.
So 2 assistant managers on compliance above these 3 separate teams, which are mixed in experience, and you've got a number 2 to you,
Yes.
is it? Yeah. Is that Laura?
Yes.
Laura, right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, she's been at MKS 17 years on and off. So
Right.
yeah, left, came back, and yeah, fingers crossed we'll be here for another 17.
Yeah, let's hope so, mate. Great. That's quite an operation, isn't it, really? I think you're bound to say it's working great. You've got to really say it's working great.
There's always things we can improve upon.
Yeah.
But as everyone knows, change is hard to sort of drive all the time. But for us, it's all about the small incremental changes that we can make that just change a little bit at a time with that sort of end goal, rather than try doing massive, wide, sweeping changes.
Other than recently, I think.
Well, yes.
I did some work with you, I think I can mention.
Yeah.
Wearing my other hat, and Adam asked me to come and have a look at the way he got the thing working. And I think with 20 years experience in bureaus, I can fairly readily see what, it's working great. It was working great, wasn't it? But I thought there were definitely 1 or 2 areas that could be improved. And, it's credit to you that you took my recommendations on board and got stuck in right away.
At the end of the day, I don't think anyone knows everything, and there's no sort of shame in asking for help and getting someone like yourself to sort of come in and view things.
And a third party with an external view, but experience in this world.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure working with the team. You got a great setup, Adam, I have to
Thank
say.
you.
Not just saying that either. So, if there was such a thing as a typical week for Adam Flight, apart from all the media appearances and all that sort of stuff, photo shoots and everything,
golf networking,
that, if there's any time left for work, what would a typical week look like for you?
I sign off quite a lot of payrolls because we do a lot of client account sort of payments on behalf of clients. So I look after around about sort of 200 payroll only clients, of which probably about 25% of them use client accounts.
Payroll only, so they don't use any other
service within MKS.
Okay. Right.
And then I stand in for other partners when they're on holiday or don't respond quickly enough for our finance team to release the payments and stuff.
Right.
So do a lot with that. A lot on the sales and marketing side, so a lot of prospect calls, drafting proposals, as well as then doing...
So you have developed your Sales and marketing skills.
Yes, so develop sales and marketing, and then once clients do come on board, looking after the anti-money laundering, letters of engagement, all of that. So I look after that whole end-to-end process sort of myself.
The whole
Sort of client onboarding.
heavy stuff really.
Yeah.
Non-payroll,
Yes.
transactional. Client accounts are funny old things, aren't they?
Yeah.
A lot of people use them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't like them for the faff it
Yeah,
can introduce.
I think if I had my way and finance had their way, we'd do away with client accounts and just have everyone either making payments themselves or via Baxtel. Baxtel is definitely the better way to go, but it has its downsides in the fact that you can't do faster payments. So we do have some clients that send in funds late, and we're doing same day faster payments in order.
Some
to
people
make
might
sure
not
that-
understand, but client accounts are it's a middle account that clients have to pay
Yes.
into for you to pay out of,
Yeah.
rather than a straightforward backs
Yeah,
operation.
so particularly for those clients that we have some clients based overseas that want to just pay a massive lump, so they normally pay the net salaries and the PAY liability to us, and then we pay employees and pay HMRC.
Yeah. They might not be able to get a British bank account
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah, okay. So, another question about yourself. Does being a non-payroller strictly, I know you know quite a lot, I'm quite astonished sometimes when you come out with answers to technical questions, but does being a non-payroller help or hinder you in your role?
I'd say there's probably pros and cons to both. It hinders me in some ways in the fact that sometimes I wish I could answer client queries and I'm reliant sort of on the team, but I know my limitations and I'm sort of not shy of asking those on my team, no matter what the level is, sort of as to sort of helping explain how something is calculated. But on the plus side, it means that I don't get dragged into the day-to-day
Absolutely.
technical side of doing stuff. And it's more utilising that HR background and sort of covering that grey area where payroll and HR mix.
So that benefits you believe the HR?
Yeah, I'd probably say that's the
Understanding.
biggest benefit that I think the team would see, where you're dealing with settlement agreements and you don't know what pay components should be taxable or tax-free, or if it's to deal with maternity or holiday pay, anything like that is a payroll element, but should really be covered sort of under HR or any contractual sort of queries and things like that.
It's funny how many bureau seniors want to hang on to, and I'm not saying you do, but you alluded to, I wish I knew more, want to hang on to all that detail, and I think it just holds people back. You know, when you can have colleagues, and most people are running a team of, 3 at least, if not 5, 10, 20, and you can rely on your colleagues, and you can be that strategic manager that, takes the business forward and avoids getting bogged down.
I think that's right. I think it's looking at the team that you have and utilising their strengths and saying, well, I can't look after all of that. You look after that. That's what you're good at and have the experience doing, and I will look after everything else.
Which allows me to bring in an interesting point, really, I suppose, and that is ACT.
Yes.
By the Payroll Centre. So you mentioned utilising the team's strength. You need to know what they are, don't you? Their strengths and their weaknesses, if you are to utilise them accurately and fully, and if you're to develop the areas within your team that might be slightly lacking. Yeah. So you, I believe, use ACT, don't you?
Yeah. So this is the second year we've been signed up for sort of ACT. We started with them sort of in April time last year, and the team have embraced it. They get on. They do the modules. We've got the dashboard, which is fantastic, so we can see where there are gaps.
This is version 2.
Yeah,
it's very visual, isn't it?
Yeah, very visual. So
this
the
is
red, amber, green.
Yeah, it's a unique tool, I think, in the marketplace. I don't know anything else, because when payroll is such a complex subject, and you've got very helpful team members who are keen and willing to go that extra mile, sometimes stepping beyond their knowledge. It's vital, I think, to understand what they do and don't know, where you've got strengths and weaknesses, where you can team people up, or where you need to bring in training.
Yeah, and sometimes people don't know what they don't know until they actually do an assessment and realise there are gaps in their knowledge. They may have been doing, we've got a team member who's been here 27 years. Right. No, 29 years, sorry. And even she will admit that she doesn't know sort of everything. So
I don't think you can.
It's a great tool, because from that we can either get the payroll centre in to deliver half day or day's training on a specific topic that the majority of the team need updating on, or we have a supervisor that looks after training that can do small sort of half hour, 45 minute sort of bite-sized bits, just covering one very small topic for maybe sort of half a dozen to a dozen. Harriet.
Harriet, so it is, yeah, right. Working patterns.
Yes.
Sorry to jump about.
No, that's
a bit.
right.
Well, it's when my brain works, I think. I hosted a roundtable in Edinburgh last week, and a couple of interesting things came out. They always do. Working patterns. So one thing about payroll, and obviously bureau payroll, it's particularly challenging, is the back ending of the work in the month. So one team operate a 30, 30, 40, 40 working pattern, 30 hours a week in the first 2 weeks in the month and 40 in the last 2. That seems to work really well, which I thought was quite interesting.
Never heard of that actually, but actually that would work.
Yeah.
So,
how do you manage this?
Full-time equivalent for us is 37.5 hours a week. But we are flexible on start and finish times. So the earliest person on the team starts at 7 a.m. and finishes at 3:30.
Right.
On the later side, the latest person starts at 10 a.m. and finishes at 6:30.
Right.
And what we try to do with those team members that don't typically start sort of around 8, 9 o'clock is we'll pair them up with particularly overseas clients, dependent on the time difference. So those that start at 7 o'clock will pair them up with Indian clients, or those based sort of out east, or those that start late, some of our American, Canadian or South American sort of clients, so that we're effectively operating an 11-hour day across the whole team. And it just gives clients that extra couple of hours of contact during the day that they may not typically get if we were operating a standard sort of 9 to 5:30. We've got probably about a third of our team are part-time as well.
Right, I thought you did some part-time. So we've got flexible working first of all. Are they encouraged to, use their time across a month as they see fit?
So we do banked hours. So at the beginning of the month when it's quieter, if people haven't got anything pressing to do towards the end of the day and want to log off an hour early, they can sort of log off knowing that they'll make up that time.
Do you need permission?
At the back. No,
you just do it.
No, if it was perhaps they wanted to bank sort of half a day, then yes. But it's more a case of informing their supervisor, I'm logging off, but they don't need to ask permission. And then at the end of the month, knowing that they're then going to make up those hours, and Laura, the payroll manager, then tracks that and makes sure that everything tallies up with what people think they've accrued and taken. And it just gives them that flexibility,
which you need, don't you? In this world, definitely.
That's right.
But on that flexibility piece, there's one firm up based in Edinburgh. They're not a huge team either. They've recently implemented a 4-day working week, Fridays off.
Wow.
They work a full, 37.5 hours, Monday to, so they start early, Monday to Thursday, but there are all sorts of challenges there of managing clients and their expectations, and but the lady there said that while they didn't have a high staff turnover, they're just a normal sort of turnover staff, nobody's left since this was introduced.
Oh, wow. Probably because not many places are doing it.
Well, I think if you're working that way and you go to an interview and say, "Do I have to work Fridays?" Well, yeah. It would be quite often.
Yeah, I think with a team my size, I would be cautious about giving a definitive sort of day off, or when there's no one around, but perhaps split it across 2 or 3 days and sort of say, look, a Monday, a Thursday or a Friday, because we do run quite a lot of weekly payrolls, and then allow people to pick a day and then make sure that a third, for instance, are off, so that 2/3 are working. But I don't know. I think it's still. I know that the 4-day week has been around now for coming up to about 18 months since that first sort of pilot. Those sort of 100+ companies sort of piloted it. But who knows what the future sort of holds. It could be something later on down the line. But
I think it's really interesting though that firms are looking at ways to be more flexible with the workforce. I know the first podcast was with Tracy Jerram at Cox & Co, and everybody can have one Friday a month off. You can choose when. I don't think it's a fixed same one. Might be wrong, Tracy, if I am, I apologise. But yeah, I think it's great to see that level of flexibility. So you've already mentioned office remote hybrid setups. Everybody's remote apart from one person.
Yeah, pretty much.
And just because that one person,
they live that close to the Romford office, and they just prefer the working environment, working in an office, because they like to switch off at the end of the day, go home, and not have that computer lurking in the background that could call to them to check on emails or anything else. But other than that, everyone else is completely remote. We've got some people as far northern sort of Essex, almost into sort of Suffolk. We've got one person in Wales, another person down in Bath, 2 down in Torquay, a couple down in Kent, and then everyone else is around London and South East.
So this spun out of COVID, I assume?
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, you were
100% in the office.
Wow. So it's quite a change then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really. What challenges does it bring to management?
I think it is that personal contact. It is having, unless you regimentally sort of set check-ins or one-to-ones with sort of people, it is sort of tough. But from the managing side of things, I will give 100% trust to everyone until that person breaks that trust. I'm not a micromanager. I don't need to know what they're doing every hour, every minute of every day, because in the world of payroll, there's nowhere to hide. As if a client's unhappy, I will know about it pretty sort of quickly. So as long as people are being productive and have got enough work to sort of be getting on and doing, we do get people into the office on a quarterly basis and try and have a team day. Last one we had was at the beginning of May, where we had 25 of us sort of in the office, which was really, really good. We knew the day was going to be pretty much a write-off for sort of work and everything else, but it wasn't for that. If there was work needed to be done, they could sit down and get it done. But if they wanted to just catch up with their colleagues, we had a big team lunch together.
And I suppose this has broadened your net for recruitment, hasn't it?
Massively
obviously,
so,
which I find it really interesting. I've no hard and fast views really. I think it's up to you what you do. But some people swear by the office and you must be in the office. Do you know, I had a meeting with one bureau manager last week online, and she said they implemented an enhancement to Teams. I don't know if you've seen this, which is you can see everybody all the time.
Right, okay.
On the screen, rather than, red, amber, green.
Yeah.
So you can always go, hey Adam, can I just ask? And it sort of replicates the office, which I thought was quite a cool.
Yeah, replicates. I don't know whether that'd be too scary, it's a bit Big Brotherish, sort of in...
It's just like being in the office.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah.
But I think it sounds like the way you've rolled out these measures, people are confident and happy that they're not being... And
we do a quarterly sort of engagement survey as a firm, and there are sometimes comments that people do feel a bit isolated or a bit sort of lonely working from home, but anyone can come into any office. They don't necessarily have to come into Romford, they can come into the London office. They don't have to necessarily sort of have anyone else in the office at the same time, but the management team, wherever possible, will always make themselves available so that if a member of their team did want to be in the office and wanted other people around, then at least then there's another 1 or 2 people sort of around, rather than just be a lonely payroller in an office full of general practice, audit and tax people.
Speaking of development and training, which we were, I know we weren't there. We've talked about the breadth of knowledge required of payroll, particularly in bureaus, because you'll meet so many unexpected circumstances. It's a big area. few firms seem to spend much time investing in non-payroll skills. I don't know if that's something you are considering, you're looking at.
It depends on the individual. So we as a firm have a pretty big learning and development team where they run things like Empower Hours, where it might be something like how to delegate, how to prioritise your time. So it's not, some are open to all staff, others are open to certain levels of management. But generally it's soft skills sort of across the board, prioritisation, time management, focus, how to focus and things like that. So they're not mandatory, but we'll always encourage the team to sort of sign up for those.
Is the take-up as good as you would want, being
No.
honest?
No, but at
I
the end
think
of the
that's one
day...
thing with payroll people though.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't want to force someone to do something that they didn't
no.
want to do. We encourage them to do it, and if they want to do one every single week, I would be more than happy for them to do that.
And when I say this, that you see this in payroll people, I'm not being derogatory about them at all. I think payroll generates a sort of person that has a sort of attitude, and it's very detail orientated, it's very caring.
Yeah, I think that's changing though. I'd like to think that sort of certainly some of the newer team members we've taken in the last sort of year or two, as well as perhaps some of a certain age, seem to be keen to learn other things rather than just the pure sort of technical side of things. We've recently signed up the management team with Heather Elkington's In the Making leadership.
Have you really? Well
Leadership
done,
training.
nice one.
So, so there's myself and the five on the management that are doing her 6-week sort of module course.
Who did you get this idea from?
I can't imagine where I got that from, Larry. But yeah, and the feedback from the team is it's great because it's all pre-recorded. They can do it sort of in working hours at their own speed and pace. And that's probably the thing that I've always found sort of lacks. People get promoted up into management roles without being taught how to manage people or what's involved. So anything, and even I've signed up for it because I don't know everything. Even me. I can always learn something new.
Okay, part 2 of the podcast. And I think chatting to you so far, Adam, has really sort of proved to me why I set up the association, and obviously set up the PBA 4 years ago, but why the Association of Bureau Managers now is the focus of my efforts. I spent years and years and years visiting you guys and talking to you and listening to you and realising you're all pretty blooming good. You're all really good at what you do, but you don't realise it usually. And if I could just bring people together, which obviously I do through the roundtable meetings and so on, or just do things like this so that people can hear about how a guy runs a bureau of, 1,200, 1,400 payrolls or something?
Yeah, just over 1,000.
25 staff. You know, how you handle those challenges, might well learn something, I'm sure they will, but they also realise they're doing a pretty good job themselves anyway. You were, thank you, you're one of the founding members of the association. Thanks for that. So it's less than a year in, but do you want to tell us what the benefits are for you?
Yeah, I think the benefits for me, and so I signed up with 2 or 3 other team members sort of joining the association, and I think for me it just gives us that place where you can share ideas, you can ask questions, there's no such thing as a stupid question, and you realise that there are people that are happy to share sort of their thoughts, their expertise, and particularly with the roundtables, sort of hearing what other bureaus are going through and realising you're not in it alone, whether it be dealing with difficult clients or pricing or recruitment or whatever it is.
Right. Is Bax dead? Is it dying?
Not yet.
Is it poorly?
I think that there are a number of companies and systems out there that are offering sort of faster payments as standard now. But I think because the world of banking is is more antiquated than payroll itself, it's not going to change sort of overnight. But that doesn't mean to say bureaus such as ours and sort of others of any size, small, medium or large, can't go down that avenue of offering sort of a faster payment service that can be that flexible to meet the needs of clients, rather than always having to stick with that sort of 2-day turnaround and not being able to do anything.
It's interesting, I think, backs, again, with my experience, 6 years ago, it was the standard and nobody was ever going to change. But it's amazing how quickly attitudes can change, I think. And so many people are looking at systems. I'm going to be running a webinar in July on, backs and faster payment systems. So a general discussion around what software people use and what software people have looked at and what options might be out there. So hopefully you'll be watching that with your colleagues. One thing I always find interesting, having come from a sales background myself, is it was fairly easy to differentiate Star as an application because overall it tends to be better than the others. In your world of payroll, I've said it before, you can't be more on time or more accurate than on time and accurate. Yeah. So how do you differentiate yourself, or how do you try to differentiate your service?
It's difficult. It's all about that sort of value proposition, and it's asking, what is different about you compared to others? I think there are some bureaus that try specialising in certain sectors. So whether it be hospitality and retail, whether it be education.
Obvious. Yeah, that's obvious.
But I do find it hard to sort of say how we differentiate ourselves, because a lot of people, I would like to think, want to strive for the same thing, which is giving that personal service to clients, not operating in a call centre style where you've got generic email address or one phone number that you don't know who's going to sort of pick it up.
So do you have a payroll act? Or are you...
We do have a payroll act, but only if someone's on out of office for a short period of time, for an afternoon or a day, and then if it's urgent and needs to be picked up, it can go payroll act and someone will pick it up. But generally, if someone's off on holiday for a week or two, someone is covering that person's emails and it automatically goes to an individual.
So if I'm a client of yours, I'm dealing with Julie at...
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Interesting. Globalist, nastiest thing. How different is, if at all, is the post-COVID world from pre-COVID, and have expectations changed?
I don't think expectations have changed. I think there's always been an expectation that no matter what is asked, payroll gets it done. And
is that a bad thing?
No, it's not a bad thing. The bad thing is people expecting those extras to be done free of charge or for very little, and then questioning when you do try pricing stuff. So, as you know, over the last year, we've been working on our terms of engagement, what's covered under a standard sort of service level agreement, and then all of the extras that could be sort of billed or charged separately, sort of either based on a time basis or a fixed fee. I think it's just making that clear to clients so that they then don't question things when there's a redeclaration of compliance, where it's the third or fourth rerun of a payroll they've had to do.
It's an interesting one, isn't it, from a sales perspective, though, because you're giving them all this, you're going to have to pay us for all this extra stuff at the beginning, and that's an opportunity for them to say, oh, well, I'll go over here, because they roll everything in.
And it is difficult. The transparent pricing is a difficult thing. We're a top 10 accountancy firm. We're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive. We often get, such and such can do it for so much cheaper, but I'm sure they can. But it's one of two things. You either get what you pay for, go cheap and you get a cheap service, or you go somewhere that is cheap with a lot of hidden costs and not realise that until you've signed on the dotted line, and then all of a sudden you get all the incremental costs and it ends up costing you more in the long run.
Again, I'm sure you've got similar instances. So many bureaus have told me that they've lost a client only for them to come back for 6 months later, and not with a tail between the legs, but realising they've tasted the other.
Or try taking it in-house and realising that payroll is way too complex to even contemplate that.
Yeah.
and within the space of a couple of months realised they've mucked it up and need someone to
Yeah.
unravel it all and put it correct.
I could go on, and I really wish we could, to be honest, because there's a lot more questions. And I think you could say a lot more as well. So thanks, Adam, for being on this podcast, and thanks Moore Kingston Smith for hosting us. If you'd thank Tim, who's your partner in the firm,
Yep.
for allowing us to use your premises. I want to also thank James Garrett of H&E Media, who sits quietly behind the scenes doing some fantastic work before, during and after when he pieces together the podcast. So thanks, James, you do a great job. I've worked with bureaus for decades. I'm not sure how many decades there are left in this old geezer here, but hopefully I'll be able to help you in various ways. And I tend to avoid recommending software products and services, but I have nailed my colours to the ACT mast from the Payroll Centre, as I think it's a fabulous product. I really understand the challenges of bureau managers, I think, and that's one tool that really does address for you the challenge of understanding the skills and knowledge of your team and how you could develop them usefully. So with thanks to the Payroll Centre for sponsoring this, and thanks to you, the viewer, for joining us. Hopefully, I hope you've enjoyed it, I hope you found it useful. Any questions, suggestions, or if you're interested in membership of the association, get in touch. You'll find me on LinkedIn or Barry@bureaustrategy.com. Thank you.